So we're going to be jumping into section 3 or lesson 3, which is talking about the water cycle. And yesterday we looked at getting water into your homes, and you wrote down the steps that it takes to get your water to your house. And there was a video that helped you watch that. And there are a bunch of different ways that it goes through, but the biggest part is that it first gets pumped to a treatment plant, and then there's actually chemicals that are pumped into water, and those are good chemicals for us, ones that wouldn't harm us, and that actually is there to clean the water. And then it gets filtered so it gets clean so that we're not drinking any dirt. And then finally, a couple more chemicals are taken out, the harmful chemicals are taken out, and then finally we get the water in our houses. So those are the different steps that it takes. But then we've got a water cycle that is specifically what we see, that happens into the clouds and then to the groundwater, which then groundwater to the treatment plants to our houses. So it's just this huge cycle, and we're going to start reading water in the air. After this, there's just going to be a short video of the water cycle for you to see in a different picture for you. But first, we're going to read through lesson 3. Look around the room you are in now. Can you see water around you? Even if you do not see it, water surrounds you all the time. This water is not in liquid form, as in rivers, or in solid form, as in glaciers. This water is an invisible gas called water vapor. So right away, that's going to be important to know that there is water all around you. The water is an invisible gas, so we can't see it, but we call it water vapor. Air always has some water vapor in it, even in the driest deserts. This water vapor was liquid water at some point in the past. It may have been water inside a plant, in a tropical river, or in the Arctic Ocean. Water vapor makes up a very small fraction of the gases in the air. The particles of water vapor, like particles of other gases, are constantly moving. Air pressure is the pressure of these gas particles against another object. Air pressure pushes in all directions because the gas particles move in all directions. Air pressure decreases as you move higher in the atmosphere. So the higher you are in the air, so if you've ever been in a plane, there's less air pressure up there that you feel because it decreases. All right, going to fill in our notes. The water vapor is a blank of gases. Is a small fraction, or is a small part of gases. These gas particles blank against another object causes. So these gases put pressure. So right in here, the particles of water vapor, like other gases, are constantly moving, and when they have pressure and push, they cause air pressure. So the gas particles push against another object, causing air pressure. And now we're going to see the steps of the water cycle. And what I want you to do during this is write the definition of the following words. And these are going to be the 4 important words when we're talking about the water cycle. Water is always moving on through and above Earth as it changes from one form to another in the water cycle. The water cycle is the repeated movement of water through the environment in different forms. The steps of the water cycle include evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and runoff. These steps can be affected by temperature, pressure, wind, and the elevation of the land. A simple water cycle is shown here. So you're going to see that right in here is just the different parts of the water cycle. So we start with the runoff is water moving downhill. It might go into the lakes or the oceans. It then evaporates, goes into the air, turns into a cloud, turns into condensation, and then the rain comes down and it again cycles through. That's the very simplest way of putting it. And then going on, we're going to read through the different parts of the water cycle. Evaporation is the changing of liquid water to water vapor. So right away I want to write that down as my definition. So changing of liquid water to water vapor. And we remember that water vapor is something that's invisible, but we're able to see liquid water. So like in a glass of water, you're able to see that, whereas the water vapor, you're not able to see. In condensation, the water vapor turns into liquid, such as water droplets in clouds. So water vapor turning into liquid water. And then the next step, so in precipitation, the water falls from clouds as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. So I'm just going to write that down. Water from the clouds. And that's rain, snow, sleet, and hail. The water cycle is not as simple as the picture below shows. The water cycle has many different paths that can be taken. For example, condensation does not only happen in the making of clouds. Condensation also forms dew. So if you ever wake up super early in the morning and it looks like the grass is wet, that's dew, and that's just condensation, and that's not it going back into the air and turning into rain. It's just another part of the water cycle. Sublimation is another possible path in the water cycle. Sublimation is ice changing into water vapor without first melting. So then as we go on, you can see this when ice cubes in a freezer shrink over a long period of time. Sublimation happens more slowly than evaporation. Lower temperatures slow the rate of sublimation. Water vapor may freeze directly into ice without first becoming liquid water. The ice crystals that form on surfaces are called frost. And that's something you're probably seeing right now. As it's starting to get colder, is you might see frost on a car, and that's when the water vapor from the sky turns into ice crystals. All right, so then the water cycle is a repeated movement of water through the environment in various forms. So it happens over and over again that we're using this water and it's just going through the environment in various forms, whether it's in a solid, liquid, or a gas. All right, and then we'll move on to the next page, many paths of the water cycle. So like the last page said, it's not always as simple as this. There's many paths that the water cycle can take. So first we've got, we'll read through this section. A detailed picture of the water cycle is shown here. Water is not always in the water cycle. You know that water is used by and made in living things. Some water is broken down as plants make sugar during photosynthesis. Organisms produce water during respiration. So I'm going to let you read through the different parts of the water cycle and just the ways that it can be taken from if there's a ocean that all of the water isn't going to go directly into the sky and then straight back into the ocean. It's not that simple, but I'm going to let you read through this part as we get then into the last section. The sun has a major effect on the water cycle. And right away, I want to write that down, that the sun affects the water cycle. The energy of sunlight causes most melting, evaporation, and sublimation. Energy is needed to raise water vapor to the clouds and move it by winds. The energy originally comes from the sun. When water vapor condenses into liquid water, it releases energy. This energy is heat. It warms the air or water in the immediate area. So then just going through that, we've got this last section, the going into it, the energy of sunlight causes most, so the energy of the sun causes most melting, which makes sense, evaporation, and sublimation. The blank also gives off the energy needed for blank to the clouds. So the sun also gives off the energy needed for liquid water, or for water vapor, I'm sorry. So the sun also gives off the energy needed for water vapor to the clouds. All right, and then what we're going to do is jump into our worksheet. If you want to pause this and watch the video first, you can do that. Or you can do the worksheet and then jump into watching the video on the water cycle. So going through this, it says, water that falls from clouds as snow, rain, sleet, or hail. I'm going to go to the page that all of these words are on. So I know that when we're talking about rain, snow, sleet, or hail, we're talking about precipitation. So that's going to be C. Ice changing into water vapor. Sublimation is ice changing into water vapor. So that is D. Water vapor that turns into liquid, such as droplets in clouds. So water vapor turning into liquid is condensation. And then I just want to make sure this makes sense. Liquid vapor that changes into water vapor. I see that that is evaporation, which is the only one that's left. So we've got letter A. All right, and then when we jump down here, water vapor is an invisible gas. So we can see right here it says, this water is an invisible gas called water vapor. So I know that that is true. Movement of gas particles in air against another object causes air pressure. So we see that particles of water vapor, like particles of other gases, are constantly moving. Air pressure is the pressure of these gas particles against another object. So right away I see that the particles in the air cause the air pressure. That is also true. The water cycle is the repeated movement of water through the environment in different forms. I remember in our notes we wrote down that the water cycle is a repeated movement of water through the environment in various forms. That sounds like that is also true. When water vapor freezes on a cold surface, liquid water forms immediately. All right, so when water vapor may freeze directly into ice without first becoming liquid water. So it doesn't need to always form into liquid water. It might jump straight to a solid. So that one would be false. All right, this last question, it says, summarize the sun's effect on the water cycle. All right, so there's two parts to this. The sun has a major effect on the water cycle. One, because the energy of sunlight causes most melting, evaporation, and sublimation. And it's also important because it raises the water vapor to the clouds and it condenses into liquid water, and which is ending up to be heat. So I'm going to let you guys write that in your own words on this last part. Do not forget to put your name on top, and then you're going to be all set for lesson 3.